I quit making my dream game. Well, at least one of them. About 3 years ago, I released this video called Building My Dream Game. This was my first video specifically talking about game development. Before, I mostly created videos talking about career advice, specifically in the tech industry. One day, the YouTube algorithm started to tease me with little bits of game development content and devlogs, and I was like, instantly hooked. So I started diving deep into learning Unity and started outlining my first game when I made that first Building My Dream Game video. Now, that title is obviously a little bit hyperbolic. We can get all philosophical on like what is a dream game, but that was just kind of like a trending YouTube kind of video name. But I was genuinely really passionate about the game idea. Essentially, the game pitch was Stardew Valley, but instead of farming, you're trying to recruit an army for like a big battle. Which, by the way, I still think is like a fun and cool kind of idea. And the game was aptly named Muster. What I had in mind was that when you start the game, you'll be on a timer, and you would complete quests for various NPCs in the game world, which would increase your reputation with them, and at the end of the timer, depending on your relationships with those various NPCs, that would dictate what soldiers would support you in kind of the final battle, or one of the battles. Obviously, there were a lot more intricacies, but that was kind of like the main gameplay loop, or the one that I had in mind. But why did I move away from this game idea, at least for now? Well, when I started working on Muster, I really only had like 1 or 2 months of actual game dev experience, if that. Now, I did study computer science in college, so I did feel pretty comfortable with kind of the programming side of actual game development, at least in C# and in Unity. But all of the kind of game programming paradigms and patterns and principles in game development and game design were all pretty new to me. And I don't think at that time I really realized how much effort actually goes into making video games, even at sort of any scale. So I've noticed that the idea of the game is usually the easiest part of it, but then there's all of the art, music, programming, testing, marketing, etc. And if even one of those key features is done poorly, it can really jeopardize the fun or the success of your game. So as I got deeper and deeper into the development of Muster, I started to realize that I actually don't think I have enough experience or manpower to develop a game like this at that time. Now, some of the major features were easier than others. What I found the most difficult and the most difficult to scale was actually the questing and reputation system, which was basically like the main gameplay loop of the game. I was able to implement prototype systems, but I kept hitting a roadblock where I want the game to be fun and replayable, but creating enough different quests to increase reputation with NPCs seemed like a massive obstacle for one person, especially with the limited game dev experience that I had. Now, it's easy to create 100 quests that are kill 5 slimes or kill X blanks, but in a game that's actually not that fun to do. So that was one key obstacle I kept running into, and that's actually one of the main reasons I never made a Steam page for Muster. Fortunately, I had at least a little foresight to know that I didn't want to necessarily promise anything, especially so early on. Another major factor that led me to stop working on Muster was actually a game jam that I attempted to participate in. Now, I didn't complete the game jam, but I developed a small prototype that I started to really like, which was a deck-building roguelike kind of survival game, which eventually became Castlemancer, which is the main game I've been actually working on for the last year, which I do have a Steam page for, and you should go wishlist. And I actually took a lot of lessons from my time working on Muster, especially around feature creep or over-scoping. Now, Castlemancer still went through a ton of iterations, but every iteration felt more and more defined, whereas Muster just kept feeling sort of abstract, because I kept running into those obstacles that I didn't feel like had a very concrete solution. Also, I had more experience in game development when I started working on Castlemancer, which also helped expedite a lot of that early prototyping. And I learned that any type of RPG or really quest-based game is just a lot harder and a lot longer to develop than some other genres. And since I wanted to prioritize replayability in my games, adding roguelike aspects seemed like a better fit. But ultimately, I didn't quit working on that first dream game idea because, I gave up on game dev, or I thought it was a bad idea, or got bored. It was actually because I think I got less naive and better at game dev, and started to realize that maybe the type of game I wanted Muster to be in my head, I didn't actually have the resources to fully bring that vision to life. Whereas Castlemancer felt a lot more realistic in its scope, and a lot more concrete in its gameplay loops. Hence why I actually created a Steam page for Castlemancer and not Muster. Now, after I finish Castlemancer, maybe I'll revisit the idea of Muster and potentially pivot its scope to something more achievable by a single person, but also still true to its original vision. And if you're in a similar state, don't feel bad. For me, and likely for you, this isn't a full-time job. You can literally work on whatever you want, and there's no shame in moving to a new project or a different project if you realize that the one that you're currently working on isn't really gonna pan out the way that you want. Otherwise, you'd almost be just wasting your time. And I think that shows that your game dev knowledge or game dev expertise is actually improving, where what you thought was a good idea for a game, or what you thought was achievable in 1 or 2 or 3 months ago, or half a year ago, or a full year ago, however much time, maybe not a feasible game, or maybe not as fun as you thought it might be. So that should actually be a compliment to your game design decision making rather than a negative. And if you're potentially thinking about developing your own dream game, you can learn from my mistakes and also use this video's sponsor, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives, with thousands of classes led by industry experts. And these classes span a lot of different areas that are extremely valuable in game development, like UX design, illustration, animation, marketing, and even just general productivity. So if you're looking to be an indie game developer, an artist, or maybe even a YouTuber, Skillshare can help take your skills, hobbies, passions, or side hustles to the next level. New members are asked to share a little bit about their interests, and from there, Skillshare immediately surfaces recommendations tailored to their goals. So I selected things like game development, productivity, and marketing. Now, I work primarily from home, and lately I feel like I've been getting distracted more often. So that's why I've been going through Ali Abdaal's Notion and productivity Skillshare classes. You might have seen some of his shorter videos on YouTube, but on Skillshare he really dives deep. I love his general video style, and it's just really easy to watch. So the first 500 people to use my link in the description below will receive a 1-month free trial over on Skillshare, so get started today. And thank you to Skillshare for supporting the channel. So that's kind of what I was thinking through. Let me know your thoughts. Wishlist Castlemancer over on Steam, demos coming soon. We do a bad British accent at the end of every video. Let me know what you think. Hopefully I see you in another one. That's all from me, and bye bye.